Hello, beautiful, and welcome to Thursday Talks with me, Suzanna Kaye, professional organizer and paper specialist. I'm glad to have you here with me. So today we are talking about it's not your fault, non-traditional ways to organize papers. So if you ever feel like you're just failing at paper organizing and it's just not for you, for some reason you just can't get it together, maybe it's not your fault. Maybe you're simply using the wrong systems for your personality type. So let's talk about that today. I'm going to share some non-traditional ways to organize papers and new ways of thinking about papers that will hopefully help you understand a little bit more about some other options that are out there that might work better for you. I will also share my free organizing personality quiz. If you did want to take the quiz and figure out what your organizing personality type is, and get some specialized suggestions and ideas on what systems and tools and techniques work best for your personality type, then check out this quiz. So hopefully you enjoy that. The link is also in the video description and in the comments on most of the platforms. But I'm glad that you're here with me today. As you hop on, let me know who you are and where you're joining me from. I see we already got some love. Thank you for sharing the love. Wonderful. And CJ is here. She says, bright, beautiful morning to all. Non-traditional sounds intriguing. Yes, absolutely. And pardon me. Someone on Facebook, I'm sorry, it's not showing me your name, but someone on Facebook says, can I record this? I don't know that you can record it, but it is available afterwards at my YouTube channel and on my podcast. So make sure to stop by SuzannaKaye.com. You can hook up with my YouTube channel, with the podcast, and check out this recording later if you would like. So, oh, Peg says the link to the quiz in the chat doesn't work. Well, okay. Well, I will have to check that one out. Sorry about that. I don't know why that link's not working for you. Thank you for letting me know. Lovely Marie says, can't stay, but wanted to jump in and send my blessings to all beautiful family for we got this little steps. Oh, thank you. Connie's here and listening. Sue's here from Northeast Texas. And Laura, welcome, welcome. Lori's here. She says, hello. And the quiz is spot on. Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah, let me know what your quiz results are if you've already taken it. Hey, Mary, good to see you. And Sharon's here. Welcome. Nancy, she says, hi from the bathtub. Yes, that's the nice thing. You can watch this from your bathtub and we can't see you. I'm glad that you're joining us. Vicky's here. She says she's very interested in this project. And Jana says, hello, I feel like my old way of dealing with papers isn't working for my papers and mom's papers very well at this point. So I really need this today. That is awesome. Yes, especially if you have a complex system where you're working with not only your papers, but managing papers for somebody else too. It could get really crazy, right? So hopefully this will help you. Suzanne says, good morning from Brooklyn. And somebody on Facebook says, where is the quiz? So the quiz, if you go to this link, SuzannaKaye.live, L-I-V-E, /personality-quiz. And you can take the personality quiz right there and get your results right away. Find out what your organizing style is. You can also find the link in the video description. So hopefully that helps you out. Okay, so after this at noon for our normal Pathfinder, my Path members, your exclusive talk, we are going to talk about getting past paper guilt. So if you ever feel guilty for not being able to keep up with your papers or the status that your papers are in, or things that you have or have not done with your papers, if you're holding on to any of that guilt, we're going to talk about reframing that and really getting honest about what you should feel guilty for, which is mostly nothing, but really what you shouldn't be guilty for and how to get past that, because guilt will hold us back. So Pathfinders at noon, if you're one of our members, then join me for that talk. All right, so let's talk about non-traditional ways to organize papers. So a lot of times we hear that all of your papers should go in your filing cabinet, right? Unless you're actively working on them, they should go in the filing cabinet. And that is the traditional way. Sorry, allergies are awful. That is the traditional way to organize your papers. It's what we've been taught. You alphabetize them and put everything in categories and subcategories in your file cabinet. Well, that does not work for most people. That works for one personality type, but even that personality type, there needs to be some adjustments from how we were taught. right? So in the organizing personality types quiz, you will find that there's the administrator, the CEO, the inventor, and the counselor. So if you are an administrator type, or a lot of us have, two types, one that's main type and one that might be weaker. If you are primarily an administrator type, then one filing cabinet might work for you, but you probably have problems with the overwhelming amount that you're trying to stay on top of. So even then, the systems that were traditionally taught are not even working for our administrators, who really were born to be able to use filing cabinets much better than the rest of us. If you're one of the other three personality types, the counselor, the inventor, or the CEO, then one filing cabinet definitely won't work for you. You need to adjust that. So having only one place for all of your files does not work for most people. Now, one filing cabinet, it simply is not convenient for most of the papers that we deal with on a regular basis. Having them all in one filing cabinet, it's simply not convenient. So there are 5 major paper categories. Now, I cover these. This is from the Paper Path course that I have. And these 5 major paper categories, these are what I take you through in the course. We organize one of these systems that link together at a time. We put them together step by step, small steps. So what we start with is the first category. And this is the most important category to start with. This is your incoming and active papers. So all the new papers that come into your home, or the papers that have something that you need to do with them. All of these need to have a place where they can safely be stored until they can either be filed or have whatever to-do item that needs to be done completed. And the way that we do this in the Paper Path course is with the action file. It can look like this action file, which you've probably seen me talk about during our action file challenges. In March, on March 20th, we'll do our action file challenge again. That's one of our top challenges, and it's free. But we'll build these together in March if you don't already have one. But if you already have one, then your action file is the place for your incoming papers and your active papers. Now, why is this different from the traditional ways? Well, the traditional ways of storing new papers that come in, we hear things like only touch it once. Well, only touch it once does not work for most of us. We're busy. So we can't open the piece of mail and go file it right away, or scan it right away, or do whatever needs to be done with it right away and then file it. Our lives are too busy. So only touch it once really does not work for most of us when it comes to our papers. What does work is having a really easy place where we can, without much thought, make sure that it is put in a category so it knows its next step and it's easier to deal with when we have the time. So with the action file, you'll find that it's called an action file because the different papers are filed based on the next action needed with them. So you have 10 or fewer categories to choose from, so your brain is not trying to figure out where that should go. It becomes automatic after you've used it for a little bit. You just automatically know really quickly which folder it goes in. So you come in with the mail, the dog's barking, the kid's crying, the husband needs something, you're holding the groceries, and you can quickly just tuck things into the right folders really fast because it requires very little thought. So there's no more piling up. So it can handle all the different tasks that you have based on the papers, and it's a place to put things that just simply need to be scanned or filed or shred. If you don't have a shredder nearby, you could put it there really quickly so you don't have to go to the filing cabinet right away. So the first step I always say is setting up your incoming paper system with your action file, because that way you're not adding to the problem as you're working on the rest of your papers and nothing important gets lost. You don't want to lose those papers that have something that you still need to do, right? So setting up your income and active papers is the most important, and that is always our first step. And that is the first paper category that I tend to talk about. I'll tell you the other 4 in just a minute. I want to hop on over to the comments. Asking about the quiz. She's on Facebook. Yeah, go to the link, the SuzannaKaye.live/personality-quiz. And I'll put that on the screen again in a little bit as well. So you might have to type it in if you're in the group. Hi, Wendy. Wendy is here. Welcome. And Lori, welcome, Lori from Ohio. And Francie, Peg says, okay, good. Peg says the link that's in the video description works. Oh, I'm glad. I don't know why the one didn't work in the chat, but thank you for letting me know. Hey, Marge, glad to have you. Suzanne says she took the quiz previously. She says, how can I access my results, or should I just retake the quiz? You should probably retake the quiz. We don't have it where it'll store your results. I'm so sorry, because it's just a quick external quiz. But if you take it again, you absolutely can take it again, and you will get those results in your email and I believe on the screen as well. Hey, Maggie. She says she's got a bad connection today, getting bits and pieces, but grateful that she can rewatch. Yes, catch the podcast if you need to, or rewatch later on YouTube. I'm glad you're here. Yes, Wendy says the action file has helped her so much. Yay! I'm glad. So what was the first category she asked on Facebook? Incoming and active papers. So all those new papers coming into your house or papers that have something you need to do with them. That's the first category. Hey, Mal, glad to see you. Lori says that she added receipts and tickler folder to her action file. Yes, on your action file, you can add a couple of custom folders based on what you need for your life. So that's great. Yeah, as long as you have fewer than 10, it sounds like you're doing awesome. Hey, Valerie, good to see ya. All right. Okay, so we talked about with our 5 major paper categories, right? And we go through these one at a time, setting them up in the Paper Path course. I take you step by step through setting up each of these in your home and how they work together. But the first step is the incoming and active papers. Pardon me. Okay, that's where everything goes when it first comes into your home, right? If it's an incoming paper, it can land in the action file, and then it will go to its next home when you have the time. So the next category are your short-term files. Now, your short-term files, depending on your personality type, they could live in your filing cabinet, but usually that's not the most convenient place. Most of the time, our filing cabinet is best kept somewhere out of the way, right? It's usually not that pretty. It's not always that easy to access. There's usually a lot of different files in there. It can easily become overstuffed. So short-term files are best kept near where you do your paperwork. So if you have a file drawer in your desk, that's a great place for short-term files. If you have another type of hanging file box that you wanted for your short-term files, that could be near where you work with your papers or moved to that space if it's at your recliner downstairs, that's a great place for your short-term files. Now, with short-term files, what makes them short-term? These are things that you think you only need to keep for a year or less, right? You don't think you will need them beyond a year. So if you're planning to only keep your utility bills that you've paid for a year, those would be short-term files because it has a purge date of 1 year or less. And your short-term files keep 1 full year of papers that you need at a time. And within the Paper Path course, I show you within your short-term files how to set them up to be self-purging files, where at the end of the year, automatically you can review them, pull out anything that still needs to be kept longer than that year, purge the rest really easily so that it's not get overwhelming. But the most important thing is having those short-term files either in a separate area of your file cabinet or next to where you're doing your paperwork, preferably, so you don't have to keep getting up and sitting down for those items that you are most likely to use more often. Because most of the files that we do access, we received within a year or less from whatever date it is, right? We're not accessing the really old papers very often. So those short-term files are the ones that you would be more likely to access, but even then, you're accessing very few of them. Most of them are just in case papers, right? Just in case you need to look back at them, just in case you have an issue. So 1 year or less, keep them in short-term files. Separate section of the file cabinet if it has to be, preferably a file drawer or a file basket that can be near where you work with your papers. And the reason we do this, we don't want our file cabinets to get overstuffed, right? How many of you, let me know in the comments, how many of you feel like your file cabinet needs to be purged because it has a lot of old papers in there that really you could let go of, or it's just overstuffed? Let me know if you can relate to that in the comments. But that's why we keep our short-term files separate, and having self-purging files really helps keep it from ever becoming overwhelming and overstuffed. So quickly in the comments, before I go on to the next category, Susan says, hello from very snowy Wisconsin. She says she's an overwhelmed administrator type. Aw, she says, I added a donate subfolder in the to-do folder. Wonderful. Yes, if you donate a lot of things, it's great to have that separated out if you have a lot of papers that go with it. I love that. Well, I love our administrator types. We have a lot of administrators in our group. Peg says, my to shred file and my action file has eliminated my many piles of papers to shred. Yay! Woo, woo, woo. Love that. Love that. Sue says she has lots of old papers that she has to purge. Sharon says, yep, boy, do I need to purge. Lori says, I have overstuffed files in long-term file cabinet, but have been occasionally working through the folders to purge. Good. Sue says, lots of old papers. Oh, I already said those. Jana says, yes, papers everywhere. Oh, hi, Kristen. Good to see you. Wendy says, very overstuffed, but a work in progress. Love it. Yeah, it is so easy for our long-term files to get overwhelming, right? So the third major paper category, we have incoming and active papers, right? All the new stuff that goes in your house. Short-term papers. Those are the things that we want to keep for a year or less. So our long-term files they should only be the things that you know that you need to keep for 1 year or longer. So those are your archives. Those are the things that you plan to keep long-term. That's why they're the long-term files, and that is what goes in your filing cabinet. And the nice thing is you can have a smaller filing cabinet because of that, and the other file drawers can easily hold office supplies, photos. If you have a photo organizing project going on, specific project, those other file drawers, if you have a big file cabinet, are really useful for other things. But your archive files, those are the main things that should go in that big file cabinet that's harder to reach because you're not going in there as often. And that way you don't have to go all the way to that big file cabinet and look through a ton of file folders in order to file a paper. It makes it so much easier to find what you need, to file what you need, and know that that's all protected and safe and not getting overstuffed because you're not adding short-term papers in there. The short-term papers are what overstuff your file cabinet. So when you keep them separate, such a smoother system and so much easier to find things. So incoming papers, short-term files, long-term files. So what are the other two categories, right? Well, important papers and information, that is an essential piece of your paper organizing. If you are depending on only being able to find your important information in your file cabinet, in your long-term files, that is a very inefficient way to make sure that you have all of your important information. Plus, if there's an emergency, it's going to take you longer to find the information. Your loved ones may not know where in the file cabinet to find things or what types of things even exist. And it's going to take you just a lot longer to respond to an emergency or those daily questions that we have about what's your bank account number, what is your health insurance ID number, all of these things that come up that really that's the only thing that we're going into our file cabinets for, right? Is information off of these important papers. Well, if you have it all in one place where you can quickly grab it and find that information and your loved ones know where to find the most important information, that is going to save you so much time and stress and protect you and your loved ones. So number 4 of the 5 important paper categories is important papers and information. Now, within the Paper Path course or within our online library, we have the Spark Life Binder. That's how we do it within the Paper Path course and here at SuzannaKaye.com. You can build your own important papers binder. It does not have to be the Spark Life Binder. This one's just already completed for you where you just have to fill in the blanks. But having all of these important details at your fingertips is going to help. So end of life, dependent information, medical information, finance and insurance, real estate and personal property, legal and official records, digital life, all of that important information at your fingertips means you're not going back and forth to the filing cabinet for the important info. In an emergency, you can grab this and have everything you need right at your fingertips. Along with that, this is actually the second thing that we set up in our paper system is our emergency medical folder. So after you get your action file set up, you set this up next. And twice a year, we do a free challenge where we set up our emergency medical folders, and I give you templates to do this. This is also part of that Spark Life Binder. But having a quick grab and go for hospital visits, doctor's appointments, emergencies with all of your important medical information. That's essential too. So important papers and information, that is one of the major paper categories. All right, so in the comments really quickly, oh, Lori says, Spark Life Finder, best resource ever. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I love that. I hear that so often. It makes me so happy to hear. Lori says, I keep envelopes for this year's invoices, receipts, credit card statements, and about every year or two, I go through and purge what I no longer need. Receipts, if we sell the home, are put in an envelope. Fantastic. Good. I love it. Yes, you're an administrator type, so you can do some of that more detailed organizing. And I love that you've got a system that purges. And that's the important thing. With the short-term files, having a system that has a trigger to get you to purge it, that's easy, that's the important part, because otherwise there's nothing that tells us when to purge. And then by the time we do, it is overwhelming. So number 5 in our 5 major paper categories. So the 5th major category in the Paper Path course are the special papers. So special papers would be anything that does not fit in that regular paper flow, right? So a paper comes into your house, it goes into your action file with your your incoming and active papers. From the action file, once it gets completed, any actions are completed, it either goes to a short-term file or a long-term file. And if there's important information on it, then it also gets entered in your Spark Life Finder. So that's our paper flow. Anything that's not within that system would be a special paper. So there are times where we have a unique situation where we need other important information at our fingertips. So one example of that would be a caregiver, right? Our caregivers, we suggest putting all of your caregiver information in a binder, like the Spark Caregiver binder. So having all of that important medical information and care information and provider information, all of that in one place is essential if you're a caregiver. And that would be something where you need it outside of that paper system. It should be a quick grab so that you can use it on a daily basis. Another example of a special paper would be your protected originals. So whether it's a safe deposit box or a fireproof safe, making sure that your originals have a place where they are protected. Another example would be recipes. Your recipes probably won't do you a whole lot of good if they're sitting in your file cabinet in your office. So having a system for your recipes or your memorabilia paper. So there are some special paper categories that would not live in your regular filing system. But those are the 5 major paper categories. And you see, most of these don't live in your filing cabinet. So what society has already always told us, the Martha Stewart magazines and all of the professional organizers that talk about paper organizing, that talk about organizing your file cabinet, they are missing out on such a huge part of your paper system. And one filing cabinet does not work for most people. So creating this non-traditional system is going to be really helpful, because the other side of it, not only does one filing cabinet, one place for all files and one filing cabinet not work for most people, but also filing just alphabetically and by type is not always the best for each personality type. Now, my administrators, you do great with your alphabetical and by type. With you, we need to make sure your categories are broad and you don't get too detailed and have too many choices and too many categories, right? So not too many subfolders, broad categories. But for the rest of us, if you're not a strong administrator type, then alphabetical and by what type it is, is it your car, is it your bank accounts, that might not be the best setup for you. And when you take that personality quiz, I give you some suggestions within the personality quiz about home organizing and paper organizing. And we talk a little bit about what might be better. But when you create a system like the one in the Paper Path course I just talked about with those 5 paper types, where each type of paper is stored in the way that it can be filed and used easily, that is going to relieve so much pressure. So it's not about alphabetizing and putting everything by type in one file cabinet. It's about finding your papers faster, because if it's a short-term file, if it's a short-term paper, then you've got one place that you can easily get to that is right there and it's not overstuffed, right? You have one place for anything that's active, that you have something that you need to do. You won't forget your to-do papers in a pile because it's in your action file. right? No new papers are just creating piles around you. So the piles can be gone. No more piles. It does not have to be extremely detailed. So it's faster and easier when you store papers according to their major paper category. So store papers based on where they are used and how they are used. So the filing cabinet is awesome for archive papers. That's where our alphabetical and by type comes in really handy. But having information in the location that you need to use it. So for example, and I dropped it, hold on. It fell down. But for example, your emergency medical folder, having this in your back office, not helpful. This should be near the door so that first responders can find it if they need to help you. So if you have to go to the hospital, you can grab it and run. This would be something where the location and the fact that it's portable is going to make it much more useful, right? Having your important papers and information in a binder where you and your family can quickly grab it in an emergency and you know right where to find it. And if something happened and you weren't around, they have all the information in one place. That is another example of having the information in the location where you need to use it is going to be much better than one filing cabinet or piles around you, and it could possibly get shuffled and lost. Finding what you need faster and helping loved ones know what's important. That's a great reason to organize papers by the type and what that type of paper needs. And then avoiding your overstuffed file cabinet, using self-purging files that we talked about in the Paper Path course. That is huge because how many times do you not want to go file papers because the filing cabinet is so overstuffed and you just feel like, oh, I'm just adding more to it. So much of this needs to be gone through and it just needs to be purged. So those are some reasons why alphabetical and by type in one filing cabinet is probably not best for most of us. And everything in one file cabinet really works for very few people. Most people need a system where the paper can flow from one area to the next in a logical way and be available where we need it, when we need it. All right, so really quickly, I will do the recap and I'll hop over to the comments and see what everybody is saying. But tell me, what organizing personality type are you? If you've not done the quiz yet, then hop over and do the quiz. But what's your personality type? I would love to hear that. Let's see. I'm reading, sorry, finding out where I left it. Here we go. So Kristen says, I need to do the quiz and sign up for the course. Yes, awesome. We would love to have you in the course. It opens at the end of March after our Action File Challenge. So please join us with the course, but do the quiz. I would love to hear what personality type you are. I'm kind of curious. Yeah. Joyce says, I have so many boxes of all mixed up papers that I'm trying to get out of our living room. Yes, in the Paper Path course, we actually have a whole section of sorting through old papers and how to sort through a whole lot of papers and work them into the system. We use what's called the onion method to make it super easy to sort the papers because having a lot of old papers can be almost debilitating, right? It can just shut you down thinking about it. Sheila says, I'm from upstate New York, just got online. Is there a way to watch a replay of this chat? Absolutely. So on my YouTube channel, you can watch the replay of this. You can also listen to the podcast. So you can find the podcast at SuzannaKaye.com. And I believe the link to the YouTube channel is probably there as well. But you're already on YouTube. So you can also just click my little icon and check out my channel. And it's in the live streams. And they're available for 30 days. If you're a Path member, then they're available for 6 months. But if you're not a member, then they're available for 30 days. I'm glad you're here. Lori says, no wonder I have papers in various places throughout my home. I thought I had to have all of them in the file cabinet. Thank goodness I was wrong. It helps having a shredder near where I process paper. Yes, if you tend to have papers in various areas of your home, it's because that's where you need them. Yes, so your instincts were right. You just did not know what system to use in order to make that work for you. I love that. Yes, I love the aha moments. Hey, Joyce, she says, Sheila, you can watch the replays for at least a week. Thank you, Joyce. I love it. Connie says she is equally administrative and counselor. That's awesome. That's actually 2 really good ones to have together. So you can kind of pick which methods work best for you out of the 2. You'll know which ones you lean towards. Yeah. Peg says, I have a sign on the fridge that directs the emergency responders in my family to the location of my emergency medical folder. That's awesome. Yes, during the challenge, we talk about that. Love it. Mel says, I have a list on my computer of all my important info. It's protected and my son knows how to access it. Yes, yay, woot, woot, woot. That's huge because having your loved ones know where to access it and have access to it, such a relief, right? I love that you've done that. Lori's an administrator and so is Sue. Connie, equal administrative counselor, she says, which is right for me. As I always said, being a motel manager is like being a parent. That's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. I love it. All right, well, let's do a recap of what we talked about today really quickly, all right? We talked about how maybe if you struggled with papers, it's not your fault. And you might need some non-traditional ways to organize papers because we are usually taught what? We're usually taught that there's one place for all of our papers, and that's the filing cabinet, and that we should immediately file papers as soon as they come in or do the action and then file them right away, only touch it once. Yeah, that sounds like a wonderful way to be, but that does not work for most people. Most people, one filing cabinet is not convenient for most of the papers that we use. And we need it to be in the location that we need to use it and stored in a way that makes sense for what we need to do with it next. So there are 5 major paper categories. These, like I mentioned, are covered in the Paper Path course. We cover these 5 categories and we cover how to sort old papers. If you have a lot of old papers to sort, we use the onion method and I teach that in the Paper Path course. But the Paper Path course starts with the first thing that I say that everybody who's starting to create their paper system or wants a change should start with the action file. And a reminder, March 20th, we will do a 1-week free action file challenge where I will share how to set up your own action file with your own supplies, nothing that you need to buy from me. It's absolutely free. Registration should open by the end of the month at suzannakaye.com in the store and on the calendar. But the action file is where any new papers that are coming into your home has a spot, and anything that's active that has something you still need to do with it, go in here. And it's filed by the next action that you need to take with it. Not by the type of paper it is, but the next action that needs to be done, whether it's to file, to do, to read, to scan. So your action file is your first major paper category, and that's the one that you should set up first so you're not adding to the problem with new papers coming in. So this is not one of the major paper categories necessarily. It's part of a paper category, but the second thing you should set up when you're setting up your paper system is your emergency medical folder. And that's the other challenge we do twice a year, the emergency medical folder, where I share templates for you to have these fillable worksheets to set up your own, but having all of your emergency medical information in a quick grab, super important. So that's your second step when setting up the paper system. But in your 5 major paper categories, you have your incoming papers, then you have your short-term files. These would sit near where you work with your papers. And these would be papers that you plan to keep for 1 year or less. At the end of the year, you will, we talk about self-purging file systems in the course, and that gives you a chance to review them and purge them if you still no longer need them. But at the end of 1 year, you can choose, do you need to keep these longer than 1 year? Or can you let them go? Ooh, I'm just dropping this right and left today. There, salt. So short-term files is number 2 of your 5 main paper types. Number 3 are your long-term files. Now that is your filing cabinet. Your long-term files are the papers that you need to keep for 1 year or more. So your old taxes, your mortgage papers, your health insurance booklet that has all the information about the health insurance, all those long-term files, those are your archives, those go in your filing cabinet. And without the short-term files in there, that means it won't get overstuffed. You can quickly find what you need in your filing cabinet, and it's easier to file things, but you don't go to your filing cabinet as often. Those 1 year or longer papers you rarely access, so they can be harder to reach. That file cabinet can be farther away. So number 3 is the long-term files. Number 4 includes that emergency medical folder that I told you about. It's your important papers and information. So having a binder, whether you set up your own or you have the Spark Life binder, but having one binder with all of the most important papers and information that you need at your fingertips. So create an important papers binder so that you and your family can grab what you need to find out, all those important numbers and data quickly. And then number 5, special papers. So if you're a caregiver, create a binder of all the important information that has to do with caring for your loved one. If you have original documents, signed agreements, birth certificates, things like that, make sure that they are protected in a fireproof and waterproof location. So that's a special paper type that would not go in the main system. Recipes. Recipes would, of course, be near where you would use them, near your kitchen, and organized in a way that you can easily retrieve what you need. So special papers are the papers that do not fit into the main file system and should be stored in the location where you would use them. So those are our 5 paper types: incoming papers and active papers, those to-do papers, short-term files, long-term files, important papers and information, and special papers. And then remember that alphabetical and storing things by type is not always the best. So store papers based on where you need to use them in the paper type, so how you would need to access them. That's why we have these different systems that we go through in the paper path course, and we call it a path because your papers do take a path through your system, right? They come into your action file with your incoming papers, and then once you've finished everything that you need to do with them, they either go to short-term or long-term files, or they get purged or scanned. And then if it's got important information on it, it also gets entered in your Spark Life binder, and that's their path. So it's a super easy flow of your papers, and they're always where you need to have them at your fingertips. Really quickly, in the comments, Lori says, early in my career, I was the administrator. Now, with Suzanna's personality quiz, I realize I'm mostly the counselor with a big dose of the inventor. So good to know the truth. And it's true where our careers, if we have a career where we have to be super detailed, we can take on the administrator role and some of those characteristics, but it might not come natural to us. So it's not something where you feel like what works for the administrators comes intuitively. It's something where you had to really push yourself to get into. So knowing outside of your career what your real type is can be huge, and it can be such a feeling of freedom, to release those requirements that you had on yourself as the administrator type. I love that. I love that aha moment. Leslie says, the emergency medical file is so important. I suffered a coma and stroke 6 months ago, and my family had a tough time finding all my medical information. Now it's all organized in one place. Wow. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, Leslie. I hope that you're doing well now. We're sending all of our love. But thank you. Yes, it is so important, like Leslie said, to have that set up. And that's why we do that second. We would do it first, but having those incoming papers not add to the problem, and doing a quick fix with the action file is super fast. That's why we do that first. But thank you. All right. So coming up, remember the free action file challenge will happen March 20th. So keep your eyes and ears open, mark your calendar, and towards the end of the month, stop by SuzannaKaye.com and make sure that you register. Or if you're on our email list, you'll get a reminder to register. But it's a free challenge. I'll teach you how to set up and use an action file for all of your important papers and your incoming papers and your action papers. Also, remember Pathfinders, in about 20 minutes, we have our Path member exclusive talk, and we're going to talk about the guilt, getting past our paper guilt. If you have any guilt at all about your current paper situation, of how you've done things in the past, of how you feel you should do things, this is for you. Getting past paper guilt. And if you're not a member, then you can always join at SuzannaKaye.com. Stop by the store. And you can join anytime, you can leave anytime, but most of our members don't leave. So I hope that you join us. Members, also, your group hikes are February 28th, March 4th, 14th, 25th, and 28th. Group hikes are where we join together and we work side by side on Zoom, and we work for 2 hours and we just get a lot done, and it's so much fun. And then our office hours are February 21st, March 7th, and 21st. Oh, I guess February 21st just passed, didn't it? We just had it yesterday. But March 7th and 21st. And the office hours is the 1 hour where I'm on live. You can hop on, get your questions answered live. And if you need any other information, or if you want to check out any of these resources, hop by SuzannaKaye.com. That's where you can find everything. But overall, I'm so glad that you're here. You are doing amazing. Check out the podcast of this if you need to listen to this again and absorb that information. Make sure that you just really think about how your organizing personality type fits into your paper system. And if your paper system is really set up for your organizing type, or if it needs to be adjusted a little bit. And keep watching. I've always got more tips for you on that. I love you so much. Keep taking one small step at a time, and you're making great change. Goodbye, beautiful. I'll talk to you soon.